I don't know what to do with the microphones because I never use them.
Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call the Board of Zoning Appeals hearing to order. Let the record indicate the following board members are present. To my left, your right, our counsel, Michelle Wilder. I'm sorry, Michelle
Promoter.
Ostrander. I'm sorry.
Or demoter.
Demoter, right. Stephen Thompson, Christopher D. Amario, myself, George Maurer, and Joe Fortino. Tonight we will be listening to or hearing case number 294, Thursday, May 16th, 2013. Case 294, the conditional use approval for any other retail business or services establishments not enumerated in the section which is determined by the board to be the same general character as principal permitted retail business or services, but not including any use which is first permitted in the business general district, or which, in the judgment of the board, would be incomparability with or, help me out there.
Deleterious.
Say again?
Deleterious.
Deleterious to the business local district to expand an existing conditional use mini storage facility. The location of this facility is 3321 Main Street, Manchester, Maryland. The applicant and owner is Gari Enterprises, LLC. The basis section for the zoning ordinance is 250-67 of the zoning ordinance. At this time, I would like to call the zoning officer for a statement on the case.
Okay, the application for case 294 was received by Mr. Pete Gary of Gary Enterprises. He's the owner of the property located at 3321 Main Street. It currently consists of Manchester Pharmacy, Curves, Lost and Found, Quality Film Video, Triple G Motor Cars, Brothers Pizza, and North Carroll Pools and Spa, and recently the addition of the Triple G Mini Storage. Total of 9 business units. He's requesting an additional building with additional storage units. His Board of Zoning Appeals request, which was approved in 2008, had a maximum number of storage units. Therefore, he's here today to request approval to construct an additional building, adding additional units to this facility. Property zoned business local, and the original mini storage area disturbed an area approximately 80 by 117 or 9,360 square feet. And this was done by, you gave him BZA approval and a full site plan review by planning and zoning. Now the second area would be about 60 by 117 or an additional 7,000 square feet. And so the case was advertised as a request for another conditional use because he wants to expand that.
Are there any questions for the zoning officer?
I've got a question. Michelle, have you had any complaints at all about the property since the approval and installation of the original?
No.
That's all.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask all who will be speaking on this case to stand and be sworn in. If you wish to speak at this time or speak later, please stand and be sworn in. Steve, would you please read the oath?
Do you solemnly declare or affirm under penalties of perjury that the testimony which you are about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call for the applicant or representative for the applicant to come forward. Please state your name and your address for the record and present your case.
We're kind of
We're together.
Twofer.
Okay, make, both names then,
Okay.
please.
My name is Guy Gary.
I'm Peter Gary, and we are Gary Enterprises, okay, except that his sister and my wife, and that's it. That's Gary Enterprises. So we're not, I mean, it's a family-owned business. We want to let you know that, and then you know, some of you know that we've been here before, because we were granted the conditional use for the first single building.
Yeah, let me turn the microphone towards, I can
Yeah,
hear
put it
both of
between
you.
two-
Yeah,
your
between,
duo there.
please.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Right, well, we were here 4 years ago, and we got the conditional use that determined that mini storage was the allowed type of, would be allowed type of business in that zoning. We put the building up. There's 14 units in that building. The building is now fully rented, the 14 units are rented. Half of them are business owners that are using that to supplement their storage space for their business. Yeah, we have some photographs here.
That's actually,
Show them the rest of the photo. And I have some drawings.
I'm gonna ask to slow you down just momentarily, just for the record. If it is your intent, which it probably is, that these, do you want these pictures to stay in the record for the case? Okay, then I have to label them. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, I
As,
see.
as, how many do you have? Do you know? Well, I'm just gonna,
As
I'm gonna
many as you
label this
need.
one.
whatever
one.
you need, yeah.
Okay, so we're labeling it for the record, applicant number 1.
And we have additional photos, should you request them. They show numerous angles of the property and the building, as seen from on the property and from the adjacent neighbors' properties.
We have them from the south, the north, the west, the east.
The storage is basically services provided to local Manchester residents. Okay, the mini storage business is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and again, I was here 4 years ago to get it rolling. My business model was to put up a building, see how it went. When I got to this point, expand and kind of go in that manner. The first rule of mini storage, as you may or may not know, is to be out on the road visible. We're the complete opposite. When I advertise my mini storage to people, I'm the treasurer of Monmouth. When I advertise, I say it's the best kept secret in Manchester. When people call me on the phone, they say, you know, where are you? You know, and I tell them, well, I don't think it's there. You know, it's there. So it is back. For those that have been there, you know where it is. For anybody who hasn't, it's, we have some drawings as well. It's behind the 2 buildings that are existing there now. What we're proposing is to put another building the same size behind that one. It would utilize part of the existing paving that's there. I'm getting, what sort of sparked this is I'm getting a lot of calls for people that want space, and I'm having to turn them away. I'm aware of the fact that there's other mini storage facilities nearby, but again, in the mini storage business, people want to be very close. I've had people move from some of those other facilities into mine because they were Manchester residents, and they wanted to be convenient and close. The building doesn't use any water, it doesn't use any sewer. The traffic impact is very minimal. Of all the things that are allowed in there, this is probably the ideal thing. The traffic is, people don't go to their mini storage every day. They typically don't come during rush hour. So, you know, it's very rare that, I mean, people are in there, they move in, and then typically, most people put their stuff in there and forget about it and store it forever. The property we're talking about is a little over 4 acres, so we've still got lots of green space there, so we're not getting into an issue. Under Michelle's suggestion, we've talked to the Carroll County Building and Permits. They showed them what we were talking about doing, they're okay with it. We talked to Stormwater Management, Mr. Martin Covington in Carroll County. He was actually excited. He said, I understand what you're doing. We showed him drawings, showed him building pictures. He said, when you put that first building in, we did a dry well system where the rain gutters are captured into a pipe, feed into a dry well. He said you would do the same thing. So he's on board with that. In fact, he was excited to see business growing. He was excited for me to see the business is growing to the point where I needed to expand it a bit. He gave us the drawing of how to do it, which I already had on file, the dry well. So we're okay with all that. I think that's basically it. What we're here today basically is asking to, you know, eliminate that one thing of 14 units and only one building. We have some drawings, if you'd like to see them, that shows layout and everything. Is that enough for everybody?
Michelle will have to take a look at them and mark them, Mr. Garra.
They're all the same, yes.
And I'm gonna do before I label it this folder, so we can figure out where to label it.
Thank you.
There's something else to roll.
That's nice.
You'll see on there the existing building. I did. The proposed is directly behind it.
I was just commenting, I've lived here 19 years, you've had that there since 2008. I never knew it was there.
We get that all the time, yeah.
Again, we're a small business, I don't have a huge marketing campaign. You know, I'm not renting billboards and things like that. And quite frankly, I was just, when we started it, it was so some of the businesses could have additional storage spaces to help run their businesses. They can buy certain products in bigger quantities, save them money, that's savings along with their customers. It has grown. The nursing home over here has one of my clients, Curves, Brothers Pizza, he's got things in there. It's basically serving the community, and quite frankly, it's just spread word of mouth. I mean, again, when I first opened, I would do a couple little newspaper ads, but it's been a word of mouth. And I've had people come to me that, like I said, have been other places, and not so happy with the way they run them. The mini storage business is, if you see on TV, you know, it's, you don't pay and, you know, away you go. Fortunately, I haven't been in that situation. I've got real good people. I work with the people. You know, people have problems sometimes, you know, and I'm not going to throw them out in the first month. I'm going to work with them. If they seem like they're legit and really trying, I'm going to work with them. I've had 2 cases where I thought I was going to need to get to an auction situation, but in the end, everything worked out. They came through. I worked with them a bit, and everybody was happy.
Are there any other questions?
So, just so I'm clear, how many additional units are you requesting? I apologize if that was in one of your exhibits. The second building going to be a duplicate or a mirror image of the first one? An
Very
additional 14?
close. I've been talking, yeah, it would be the same dimensions. One of the things that I found out, the first building, all the units are 11 foot wide, 20 foot deep. We went that way just for the ease of the building construction. The building construction is me, okay? It's basically a big erector set. But I've come to find out that 11 foot is usually an odd size, 10 foot is the normal width for a thing. And the other thing that I realized pretty quickly on was a lot of people were calling and they said, I don't need a space anywhere near that big. I need a small space. You know, I need something bigger than, you know, just for like one room or something. So to answer your question, I'm not exactly sure yet. It is going to be that size. But as far as the number of units, because you could maybe put some smaller units in or a bigger unit, I'm still trying to figure out which direction to go with that. A lot of that depends on the building cost. Obviously, when you divide it up, you know, you're getting into more walls, more doors, things like that. What I'm thinking about is basically mostly the bigger size unit, but maybe 4 or 5 of the, like 5 by 10s, 5 foot wide, 10 foot deep, something like
Well,
that.
at what number does it become economically impacting to you? In other words, it doesn't sound like you're 100% sure how the building's going to lay out, but I don't know that any kind of an approval can be granted on an open-ended, you know, ticket. So if a number had to be assigned to the second building, what would that number be that made sense economically for you?
If that building, as the dimensions there, and they were 10 foot wide, there would be 8 on each side for 16, a total of 16 units,
Okay.
as opposed to what we have now.
The 14.
That's if they're all 10 foot, 10 by
Right.
20. If, you can work off of that number. If one of them was split, you know, into 10x5s.
Well, 5x10s.
But they would be like on the side.
Yeah, typically what they do is they'll take like the end unit, and instead of it being 10 foot by, say, 20, they'll come in with end doors, and they would get 4 5-foot by 10s. They kind of go that way.
Which would add what?
But
That
with-
would add like.
That would take away 2 and add,
Without
it would
breaking
basically
it
add
up,
6 to the number.
I'm trying to write this down, without breaking it up, if you just did your 10 by 20s, it'd be 16 units?
Correct.
Okay. I couldn't remember, couldn't figure it out.
And if you went with smaller units, it'd be 22.
If we did the smaller, you'd take away the 2 and replace them with 4, so you'd have a plus of 6.
On one side.
Just on one end.
One end.
Yeah.
You could do it on, same as on the other end also.
But, yeah, but I wouldn't take, I would take 2, let's say 1 10 by 20, and put 4,
Yeah, but he's talking both ends of the building.
Yeah,
You
I'm
wouldn't-
talking about, but you could
Yeah,
do,
but I
you
would-
could do both ends.
You would only do one end.
yeah, I would only do one end, or one side of one end and one side of the other. I wouldn't take away 4 large spots, okay? The other thing that's kind of, I find humorous is, everybody says they don't need anything that big, and then they start filling it, and then they say, oh, I'm glad I didn't get a smaller one. You know, I said, I don't have a smaller one, but they say, oh, I filled this up, so people tend to have more than they think they do.
Under the original decision and order for the first request, there were a couple of conditions that were noted. Of course, the limit of 14 was noted. But then the hours of operation were also noted to be limited to 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Is that
We've
still in
confirmed those
line?
hours, and they're perfectly fine hours, and we have no problem with that. Obviously, nobody's, in any mini storage business, nobody can live in it, nobody can run a business out of it.
Right.
It is storage only. Everything needs to be stored inside. So it's, my lease adheres to all that. That's just the way you do mini storage, because if you get anything different, you're now not in mini storage, and you're creating a whole bunch of other issues.
Is the building going to be a dry building? No sewer, no water
No
connection?
sewer, no water connection.
No
It will be
sprinkler
a-
system, no irrigate-
No sprinkler system. It will be an all-metal building with all outside doors. Fire marshal, if you have all outside doors, they do not require any sprinkler systems, nor any interior lighting. We do have some exterior decorative lighting to just, light up and around, but no one has lighting or any power in their units.
Okay.
No electric in the units?
No.
Okay.
So just, I'm sorry, go ahead, George.
No, you,
No, I just wanted to make sure I understood. The 16 units sounds like the minimum? And was there a number that came out of the math exercise for a maximum? 22 for the building?
Well,
I was hearing one end being discussed. I wasn't sure if that had to be multiplied times 2.
If you're taking away 2, and you're adding 4, you're only adding 8, or you're only adding 6.
you're taking away 2 because you're.
So
splitting
Because I'm taking 2 of them and I'm splitting them into 4. So let's say 14 and then 8.
So you need 20, 22 would be the max on the,
Yes.
I have a question from, how long did it take you to fill up the first building, and what is your expectation? I know you immediate, but I mean, how long till you come back again and say, hey, this is really going great, I want another conditional use? I mean,
Exactly.
this is the second time, and what do you foresee?
To answer your first question, it took me about 2 years to fill that building. Okay? Again, mini storage is a strange thing. You get people that need it for a month. You get people that need it for 2 months. You get people that are moving in and out of the town of Manchester, need it because they're selling their house in, Nowhereville and moving to Manchester, and they gotta get their things out. And then when they buy the house in Manchester, they get finally to have settlement, then they're moving their stuff out. It did take me 2 years to kind of fill the first one. But yes, to your point, that's why ideally we wouldn't put a unit restriction on there. So if I did need to expand after this one gets filled in another 3-4 years, we didn't have to bother you guys again.
The other question I had, when you said about the dry well, who was the person, or they were a county person?
Yes,
that-
you have his card. Martin Covington,
Martin
he's
Covington.
with Stormwater Management.
I'm not familiar with who that person is, so I just,
He
is
is-
he a reputable
Yeah,
person?
well,
The guy.
He's the guy,
guy.
okay, that's all I need to hear from the lawyer. He's the guy.
Believe me,
The lawyer says he's the guy, okay.
Yeah,
Well-
he's
I
the
know
guy.
Martin very well. He's the guy.
Okay.
yeah.
But now,
I hope he lives
Joe
next to me.
supplied us with a photo, and I really enjoy your map. When I walk the property and how it slants down so far, the land isn't that conducive to adding and adding. You're going to have to backfill or fill in a lot there after that fence, aren't you? From
Actually,
what-
the way you do it is you step tier the buildings so that they become, like,
Okay.
it's on
I
one level
understand.
and then it steps down just a little bit. You're absolutely right. If you go to the far back end of that property, yeah, it goes way off, and I'm not really talking about down there. But in the immediate thing, I was talking to a manufacturer that could step the building down so that the front, let's call it the part of the new building facing Main Street would be right on that same level. In fact, it would utilize that same piece of asphalt right there. And that would come back 20 feet. And if you look real, if you measured, the ground is almost level there. Obviously, when the contractor does the footers and the concrete flat work, the floor, they do some grading to get things level. But then it would be a step down. So from the outside, it would just be a little roll down. It's in fact, one of the good examples of that nearby here is over on 140 in Westminster, right across from the Tractor Supply. That's a great example of how they step tier the buildings to utilize a piece of land.
But truth be told, you're only looking at 4 feet of fall across
For this
the
building.
building,
The
so.
next,
That is
the
correct.
next building's gonna be a challenge.
Yeah, after that, it does get lower, but you're absolutely right. When you go to the far back end of that property,
It kind of, it almost carries somewhat already. It kind of goes down, then levels for a while, and it starts down again.
and the back of that property is back up to the nature center.
That's one of my next questions. Because when you talk about putting a storage facility, and, I mean, all the luck in the world, you got 4 acres, and to me, you've already decided you're gonna put this storage facility and utilize your 4 acres, which I think is,
Now, we have 4 acres, but the front portion of that is the commercial building.
I'm sorry, the 2 acres behind.
Yeah,
Okay, you're already thinking about how can we use this land that we have? Where, is that going to impact the nature center that the town has? And as far as with the light, the fencing, and I'm asking a question because I remember when Charlotte's Quest was built and that, from what I remember, you can correct me, but when you look all the way down the hill to the far right, there's what used to be a walking trail. It looks like a break or an opening there. Is that correct?
you're talking about looking down from the
Looking
top of the
down
hill where
and
we
to-
are?
Yeah.
Yes. You look
That's
down to the right.
As far as I know, that's the town alley right away.
There's a
There's a
town
right-of-way.
right-of-way that goes from Main Street all the way back to, I believe, where you're talking about. Our property.
Oh, okay.
The back of our property is nothing but thick woods. You can't, even in
You
wintertime.
can see it from
There's
both
a picture
directions.
of it.
Okay.
You can see it in that photo from looking down.
Well, that might be
the hill.
why Charlotte's Quest had a trail there, because it was a part of the
Then
town.
you
I
can
don't
see
know.
it
Right.
from the bottom, looking
Right.
back up on those photos right there.
I think if I may, I think that was discussed in the 2008 hearing, because I'm looking at the conditions, and one of them is that you don't utilize any abutting town property or rights of way.
Right.
So I think there was already a consideration of that the
That's
first
why they
time
had to
around.
put their driveway to the
Yeah, they
left
had to
of it
move
instead
around.
of coming up that right away.
And the additional building would utilize, obviously, the same entrance. It's a gated entrance with a keypad, so we would utilize that same entrance.
Are all 4 acres, are they all deeded in one deed, or is it 2
Yeah,
deeds?
they're
It's all one deed.
The kind of issue I have with any future buildings other than this one, there's a spring back there on town property towards where the pond is. And you're gonna, so we definitely need a buffer area, and it's going downhill from there. Before we start approaching, somebody ought to look at that and see how much buffer should be around there for any buildings. Because that's our last spring that we're able to use. And
So you're saying this approval would not necessarily affect
for
that
for this
any
particular
further?
building, but anything further back worries me. We've already proven how the land slopes, and with the MTB issue and Mr. DePalmer, and it slopes that way.
Right.
Are you talking about where the town well is?
There is a well closer to Ferrier Road, way farther away. But up closer to where the pond is actually a spring head. And we actually use that for water.
I'm not sure.
It's right on the other side of DePalmer's property. You know how, that's why, I think, didn't you give a right of way for DePalmer to get his water?
We did, yes.
Across there,
In
okay.
fact, yeah, there is a,
And the way the ground slopes that way, that's going to DePalmer's. Right on the other side of DePalmer's is our springs.
Oh,
So they're saying with the flow of the ground and what could possibly come off of, the asphalt and the drainage,
Or is it down at the bottom?
it's down.
It's down at the bottom there.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be off to the, if you're looking out at the end of your property, it's gonna be off to the left,
On the other side of DePalmer.
on the other side there.
Alliance has the first sheet has a test well right there, down in the general area you're
Yes.
talking about,
Yes.
on our property.
And they're testing for, make sure that MTBE didn't get down there.
Right, and so far, that's been good. But
Well,
if
knock
you're
on
going
wood, but-
towards the Palmer's house,
Well, it
not
hit
so
the
much.
Palmers, that's how we all found out about it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So I really, I'm worried to give false hope to any other building after this one.
Well,
That
it's-
really worries me.
We're here to
Look at this.
look
yeah.
at this. It's just that, in the back of my
understand that,
mind,
yep.
it's sort of like, well, I was here in 2008, and now we're back in 2013.
Right.
Okay, now I might not be here the next time, and
I totally agree
when
with
does
you,
it,
right?
when does something out of my control or higher up has to step in and say, they have to look at it? Or you might have to,
well, certainly I would
You know.
suggest that, if, which is a pretty good if in today's economy, and
Okay.
when we get to that, then certainly we can look at what the buffer zone is and the buffer issue. I mean, certainly we don't want to do anything on our
I
property,
understand.
utilize our property that would damage the spring or the town well. I mean, that's not what we're looking to do.
Simple solution to that is just to do exactly what you did last time. If you're inclined to grant this building,
The max.
and then if and when your business expands, then come back and do a different, you can't review for a building
That
that
he's
isn't
not
there.
gonna do.
So the only review that we can
I
do now
totally
is what you've got,
understand.
and then if you wanna do another one, we'll review that.
Right, and that was, I guess, my initial confusion with why we had to come before the Board of Zoning Appeals again, because I was under the idea that when we were before you before, it was to determine whether that type of business was allowed in this zoning. So obviously, then we would be going, any new things would be going before planning and zoning as well, and those issues would be brought up at that point.
A question on the site itself. I realize that the properties in the town are narrow and very linear, and yours is no exception to that. Do you control both points of access off of Main Street? There's a smaller driveway that you show on your site plan, and that shows up in this aerial photo. That looks like nothing more than a driveway, but it does look like there may be a link.
That's on our property, but it's shared by two houses north.
Okay.
That was in the deed from way back.
right away.
The 1800s, yeah.
Up to-
That was a hint.
I guess you can see it where.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions for the applicants from any board members? Thank you.
You.
At this time, I'd like to call for any adjoining property owners who received notification of the hearing and who were sworn in to come forward one at a time, state their name and address for the record, and present their concerns. Are there any other property owners here? No, there are not. They are not.
Did we hear from Vince?
No,
Because he testified last time.
he did not.
He didn't write anything? and-
Nothing.
Nothing. And he did know about it?
Yep.
Okay, just for the
Okay.
record, I wanted that
At,
put
Yes,
on
he's
there.
on the
Thank you.
notification list.
okay,
Out. Okay, that,
He's still happy.
very good.
at this time, I'd like to call for any other interested persons who were sworn in and would like to make a statement in the case to come forward one at a time, state their name and address for the record, and present their statement. At this time, there are no other interested persons present. At this time, I'd like to call for any other interested persons any person who was not sworn in and would like to make a statement in this case to come forward, be sworn in, state your name and address for the record, and present their statement. Sir, do you have anything to say?
No, I didn't know they were going to be here.
Okay, thank you. At this time, there are no other interested persons present. At this time, I would like to ask the applicant for their final statement on the case. Please come forward if you have a final statement.
Again, we're a small business, it's a family-owned business. We have that property, we basically took that property and took an abandoned building that's sitting empty for a couple of years, opened up for small businesses. Every business is in there, with the exception of our video business, is a new startup business. The mini storage is providing a service to the residents of Manchester and nearby Manchester. I've had no complaints from any neighbors. In fact, two of the neighbors have told me that this is the ideal thing because there's other things that could be done back there that would be way worse for them. And they're very happy, and if they have any issues, they know, come over and talk to us. You know, we're not a big corporation. We're gonna work things out. Thank you.
At this time, we are going to close the Board and Zoning Appeals meeting, public hearing, and record for the case. Board members, it's time to deliberate. Let's talk about what you've seen, what your concerns are, and get our thoughts together. So. Joe, what do you have to say? What would you like to see, or what are your concerns?
I definitely think that anything from a business standpoint is good for the town. The concern is that in my 8 years on the board, it appears that a lot of these projects tend to come in for very small approvals, and over a period of time, they grow into quite a campus. The concerns I'm starting to have now is the fact that I don't think the access is sufficient. Traffic, we already know, is an issue on Main Street, but we can't hold the applicant accountable for that. We're starting to get in excess of 400 plus feet back off the road in a very twisty, windy, bifurcated access. I realize these are dry buildings, but if there is an emergency back there, I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about being able to get the emergency services back. And I'm worried about future requests. I would have liked to have seen a master plan showing me a future build out and a total number of units proposed, and that way it could have been approved for maybe a larger number of units, and we could have satisfied some of the questions like buffering and, you know, impacts to the wells. So I'm not sure. The first one made sense because there were some business owners that were reported to maybe take their business elsewhere because they couldn't get off-site storage. So that helped make the decision a little bit easier, but we're starting to get into some other site plan issues.
Well, okay.
So those are my concerns. I'd love to hear anybody else's feedback or thoughts on the application.
Well, if we require another site plan for this, would that address your concerns, especially with the fire getting back there?
I mean, I
Or
think
would it help address it?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, the concern I have is that it's hard to take a look at the existing on
Yeah.
the site. It's really hard to expand the requirement to be, you look at the entire campus. And so I think what's happening is as these are coming in, they're just looking at the new construction area, especially for things like stormwater management. And they're just making stormwater be required for the new and not the existing. I agree, I think if there's an approval, we definitely need to hold the conditions that were granted, that were put on it the first time. I think we have to be comfortable with a number of units. And it sounded to me like we have 14 that were granted the first time. We're having anywhere between 16 to 22 requested this time, so it looks like it could be in excess of up to 36 units that we would technically be granting an approval for in order for the applicant to make their program work.
I think, I understand about the more units, but I think the number of units doesn't concern me as much as the footprint on the ground. And that's, it's the same building as before, the same area, I take it, except for what you say, Steve, 3 feet short or 3 feet more. But how many he jams in there, I think that would be a thing of traffic more than impact on ground it holds. I understand,
Right.
Okay, how many people going in and out, but, okay. Joe? Chris?
Well, I echo your sentiments exactly. I do think we should uphold what the conditions were before, which probably is a good idea. I applaud the gentleman for running a successful business on that campus for a couple of years now. I remember when it was vacant, and they have brought some business into the town and done things for the better of the town. And that plays into my decision, to be honest with you.
Sure.
The number of units, I agree with George that, I would love to see only 16, 22, a couple more people are going to go back there. And the only reason I'm worrying about that, the number of units, is traffic. I mean, that's a terrible place to try to have a business. I applaud you guys for doing what you're doing there.
Can I still speak? Would we put in a request? for council?
No, yeah, we can't, because we have the meetings closed, and it's just us, it's just us discussing it ourselves.
So,
Didn't mean to cut you short.
Yeah, I wish we could pick it up and move it away from that whole
So does
intersection.
he probably.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't have any other comments.
Now, are you a fireman? Or,
No, I'm not a fireman.
is there ever any,
well,
do you know of any, okay,
they're not going to get a truck back there, I can tell
the
you
only
that.
thing, you're right, I wasn't worried about the fire, but what I was concerned about, when I drove around that building, okay, it's tight. And if you got some guy worried about getting this stuff out, and he comes around the corner, and there's a fender bender there, and they have to call for 911, and the ambulance, or the,
Oh, on the property?
yeah. I mean, I know it's tight, and that hasn't, I know of no accidents there. But that was my only concern as far as emergency for some fender bender, for somebody coming around the corner and not looking, thinking they're the only ones there. But it's small, and I like that, as far as it's not like Lizzie's Lockers, or it's combined. It's not really all that laid out.
Truthfully, when it comes to storage lot, there's not much traffic. I mean, how many times, I hardly ever see anybody there.
Okay.
I've driven around just like you did, and I didn't see any problems.
Okay. All right, so, if for a motion.
Actually, George, do we
Yes.
need to open it back up for me to ask a question of either Michelle?
Like me?
Of either Michelle?
Oh,
Yes.
either, no, you don't, I think,
Can we still, I mean,
certainly for me, no.
okay.
But if you want to ask Michelle a question, I suppose theoretically you should officially open up, but solely for that purpose.
Well, I'm going to take the easy route, I'm going to direct this to you then.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Thinking down the road a piece and maybe the property changes hands, changes ownership, what would be the requirement to convert this use? Would it be easy, or would they have to come back in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals for a change?
What do you mean to convert the use?
Well, suppose a new buyer buys the campus
Uh-huh.
and decides they want to do something different in those two buildings now. It's no longer mini storage. They want to, even if it's economically challenging, they want to change it into 2 dance studios or
Well,
something like that.
That would, there's a couple of steps that would happen there. If the purported new use is a permitted use in your zone, then they would have to get a zoning certificate, they would probably have to get a building permit, they would have to go through that process as if it were going from any permitted use to a different permitted use. If it were another conditional use, or like this one, a use that was not enumerated but was sufficiently similar to your minds, then this process would be the first process, and then they would have to go through and they would have to get building permits and site plan reviews and everything else. So just as really the nature of the use right now is almost irrelevant to the process of how they would go about changing it. The important thing there would be what they want to change it to, not so much what they're changing it from. See what I'm saying? Does that make
They're
sense?
still got to go through the steps.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of steps. And there would be a fair amount, I would think, of internal gutting and construction that would have to be done, and
Right.
building
Sure,
permits.
fair
and-
amount, right.
And, you know, I mean, if it's a dry building, I don't even know that it would be feasible to serve it, because there's no underground lines to it or anything like
Right.
that. So they'd almost have to find another dry use that was either permitted or conditional in the zone, which could be in itself a challenge.
Okay.
Did that answer you?
Yep, I think it
Okay.
did.
Is it appropriate to ask for improvements anywhere on that campus that do not specifically have to do with what they're building or asking for?
I'm not really sure I understand the question.
In other words, could we,
So like in front of the pizza place, you want something else?
Or you
Oh,
want
I-
to
think that,
you want to run a water fountain down or a
no,
water line for a
improve the
hose?
road going from the original set of buildings back to the pizza. It's a dirt road that needs improvement. That would, I think that would make you feel better about the ambulance.
I
getting
thought it
back
was
there.
awful awkward
Yeah.
going in and out. But
In other words, let me give you that.
that's, I'll be candid, so that's a more complex question,
Yes, this,
because it really is not,
or does that, if we're handing this to,
yeah, that's really
the
less,
zoning
less
commission.
of a zoning issue than it is a site plan review issue. You
and
could-
that's what I kind of
Just as
thought,
you did last time, you asked the commission
to look
Right.
at
to
that.
pay particular attention,
Okay.
no, not to that. To pay particular attention to fencing, lighting, dumpsters, trash, screening, etc. So you could similarly ask them to pay particular attention to internal, whatever you call it, roadway systems, I guess. Driveway. Yeah, an internal driveway or roadway system. And then how best to do that would be part of the review. that they
Right,
do.
but then not our
Because
decision.
that's really more their
Okay.
expertise, frankly. than
Absolutely.
with all this stuff.
okay, putting together a motion. What are some of your concerns, or what are you propose? You know, we have conditions. This is a conditional hearing, so we gave him conditions in 2008. From what I understand and I feel, I would like to see the same conditions with the lighting the trash, the fence, to still be in effect, because I think that's working real well. But are there any other conditions that you would like to add to that? Does anybody have anything?
I'd like them to look at that driveway, that little, going from the, for lack of, on the right-hand side, on the, along the Sheets property.
I'm gonna run down.
And I'm not asking to pave that, just
Right.
improve it.
I'm gonna run down the list. I've been taking notes.
Okay.
Sure.
If a motion was to be made, and let me get this, that's not gonna be the motion. But I think the first thing is that we would limit the number of units to no more than 36 total for the site, which is 14 for the first building and no more than 22 for the new building. We would limit the building to no bigger than 40 by 80. We
Gotcha.
would regurgitate the conditions that were placed the first time. The access to the use shall be solely on applicant's property and not utilize town property. The hours of operation, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Any contracts, regulations, or documentation provided to tenants shall specify that the units should be used for storage. And that we, again, recommend that it go in front of a site plan review. And that we take a look at fencing, lighting, dumpsters, trash receptacles, but we also take a look at the internal drive aisles on the property.
Road bed.
I think that would get the applicant enough storage units to satisfy their potential maximum build out of the second building, and hopefully give some guidance to the committee to look at site access.
Those are grand conditions. If
Does,
we had a motion, we could attach the
I-
conditions to it.
does
wanted-
the full site plan
'Cause you know what's next.
review include fire, and it includes,
You don't, that wouldn't be
No,
shipped
when we
around?
did this before, it was fully subject to going before planning and zoning.
Just the planning and zoning commission, but
Right.
then the.
It wasn't
the-
going through the county.
No, it'll go to yours other than as necessary to go to the county. If there's stormwater management applicable, that'll have to go to the county. Because we don't do it, and they have to do it, they're the only ones, we don't know how.
well, with all due respect, I'd like to add, all due respect to the applicants, I would like to verify the stormwater management with the county.
There are certain things that the county does exclusively, and that's one of them.
And that,
Grading,
and
site
that's
control,
cool. I
all
would
those
just
things.
verify with Martin that everything's copacetic back there, since it doesn't get passed around.
So we would require the
Well,
applicant,
I'm not completely sure I understand why you say it wouldn't be reviewed at all by the
No, I
county.
said it didn't. He asked me if the last time it did, it did not. It was
Alright.
only through planning and zoning.
Okay, well, then you could simply say that you want a full site plan review, including review of any, county ordinances as necessary.
Okay.
And then they'll look at what you're doing and see if you have to do anything different. I think you already have a pretty good idea. You've already done a lot of that.
But then it needs a traffic study.
Nothing needs a traffic study.
No.
No?
No.
All right,
You know the traffic.
No, that'll come back to haunt me. I
well,
know.
no,
I said
actually,
nothing, but-
I talked to Michelle a couple of days ago, and the problem that I was having with a traffic study is I'm not sure what we test the results of the traffic study against.
they're useless.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, unless the county or the town has some kind of a standard to say, once we exceed this many trips, then we're gonna start asking for improvements.
And I can
It
tell
would be
you my
arbitrary and
experience
capricious, we don't have
with-
anything.
With traffic studies,
They're
Right.
not worth the paper they're written on.
Right.
especially for a use like this where we know the traffic,
Yeah.
Okay.
the trip generations are really gonna be low.
Right.
And they're coming onto a street that's already, shall we say, problematic.
Problematic, yeah. I've never seen one denied.
Don't even say it.
Okay. All right, then, this time I'd like to reopen, call to order the meeting. This time, the board will deliberate and vote. The vote will be taken individually, with each member stating their reasons for their vote. Votes are tallied at this time. If there, in the case is approved and there is a need for conditions to be placed on approval, the board discusses and conditions attached to the approval. Do we have a motion?
I'm going to take a stab at making a motion. I make a motion that we approve the conditional use to allow for storage, mini storage to take place on the property with the following conditions: that the site can have no more than a total of 36 storage units, that the project is subject to a full site plan review by both Manchester Planning and Zoning Commission and Carroll County for ordinance conformance, that the Manchester Planning and Zoning Board specifically, or the Planning Commission specifically pay attention to fencing, lighting, dumpsters, trash receptacles, screening, and the on-site drive system or access drives. The second building shall be no larger than 40 feet by 80 feet. Access to the use shall be solely on applicant's property and shall not utilize any abutting town property or rights-of-way. The hours of operation shall be limited to 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And any contracts, regulations, or documentation provided to tenants shall specify that the units are to be used for storage only.
Did you get all that, Michelle?
Yeah, well, we already have much of it, and I got the
In
rest.
the conditions of 2008, or,
Well, they have to be modified a little bit because of
Right.
the size
Okay.
issue. They're essentially the same.
Okay.
I'll second it.
so, okay, we have a second. And the vote? Stephen?
Yay.
Chris?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right. The excuse me, case 294, the request is granted, is approved.
Just
meeting
like
is
last
closed.
time, just like last time. We'll do an official decision.
Well, the access, are we talking about the right side of the existing building where North Carolina is?